And thanks for that. Really interesting. And when you think about them, and I guess probably focusing more on skills and talent, when you think about organizations, what are the I'm interested because we talk or we hear a lot about reskilling, upskilling, and kind of that. How do we transfer skills? How do we build some of that? What's your view of that when we think about skills and talent shortages, of how we're thinking about, or organizations talk a
Well,
lot about reskilling and upskilling?
Well, I think reskilling, upskilling, training and development, learning and development, whatever you want to call it, has become something that organizations need to be more serious about. I mean, I think if you've got the shortages that we've just talked about in terms of labor, skill, and talent, then, if you can't hire it easily, you have to develop it and grow it yourself, which means that we have to have more robust approaches. So I think it's twofold for me. One is about we need our professionals, our managers, our leaders to have a view that their skill and capability and talent is in their hands. So some of this needs to be self-directed. It needs to be driven from the individual, looking to ensure that they've got relevant skills, that they're keeping up to date, that they can think about the next progression or the next job, the next opportunity. So some of it's about the individual. And then from an organizational perspective, we have to be much clearer about really focusing on areas of skill and talent where we know it will make us that much more effective as an organization. So I'm a great believer that you have to make trade-offs. This is not about reskilling and upskilling everybody. It's about thinking about the capabilities and the skills that are an absolute prerequisite for you to be successful as an organization, and then focusing on the quantity that you're going to require, and then developing specific programs of activity, training programs, a whole range of different interventions that ensures that you get the capability that's required for you to be successful. So I think it most probably means the learning and development and planning and manpower planning, workforce planning, talent mapping needs to become a much more of a common core competency within organizations. And in reality, I think most organizations are poor at workforce planning. I don't think many organizations are good at talent mapping. So I think there's a huge opportunity where organizations need to really think about this a little deeper and actually deploy things that perhaps they haven't done historically.
And give me an example that perhaps, and it may be first bus, but when you think about that, what you've just explained, give me an example of how that might play out when you say getting a little bit deeper into that.
Well, I mean, we're doing a lot of work around, we're decarbonising our fleet. So that means we are moving from diesel buses, combustion engines, into electric vehicles. We've got hydrogen, but predominantly electric. So what does that mean? Well, this business is investing £100 million a year in new infrastructure. That's, the infrastructure within our depots and then the buying of new buses. We made about less than that in terms of profit last year, and we're going to do that for a decade. So that level of investment in hard infrastructure and equipment requires a fundamental shift in our engineering population. So if you think about skills, we had lots of people that were under engines with grease and oil and all of that sort of stuff, keeping our engines going. In reality, that dissipates. We've got people that are much more now diagnostic technicians that can look at a vehicle which is a much more electrical, and it's about battery management. So we're looking at skills that are quite different. And so what we have got to do is we've got to think about how do we phase out our fleet, our diesel fleet over time? How do we grow our electrical fleet? And what does that mean for our workforces in depots? Well, many of our depots we're going to be doing both of these things at the same time. So we've got to keep both sets of skills. However, some of our depots are now going fully electric. So we are again developing plans to articulate what that means. So in a fully electric garage, what does the fully competent professional engineer look like? What does the technician look like? What does the apprentice look like? And making sure we've got training and development in place to ensure that those people are able to fulfill the roles that we now want them to do.
Yeah.
So if you then look at that a macro perspective, that's a huge reskilling exercise. So we have got to move our whole workforce, 2,000 or 3,000 people, from being mechanical engineers to being electrical engineers, let's say. So that's a really nice, tight definition of where we've got a requirement.